Hey everyone, welcome back to Sharp Cuts. You're here with Garrett May, Josh Nickel, as always. And alongside today, we have Steve Delaney, head coach of the Brock Badgers women's volleyball team, and my biological father, John May. Welcome to the show, guys. Steve, sorry, I got to get something out of the way right away, because last episode, we were planning on having a marquee episode. We've actually delayed. We got an even better one, I think, here this episode. But we were supposed to have my biological father, John May, on with Olympian Marquise, but apparently there was an emergency boat trip right before the episode started. Dad, can you maybe give us some insight there?
Well, the truth of the matter is, Garrett, I don't like being overshadowed by a guest like Marquise. Like, he talks way too much. He talks over you. He doesn't really give you an opportunity to express your views. So I'm much more excited about being on the show with Steve Delaney, who I know is a very intelligent guy, comes up with good opinions and good thoughts, and certainly doesn't interrupt, and he's not rude like Marquise.
Well, I like the strategy of taking my shot and turning it into another shot. It works well. So welcome to the show, guys. Josh, let's get into it. We wanted to talk about a few things tonight, so let's roll right into it. What do we want to start with, Josh? Because you know me, I'm totally unorganized. I have no idea what's going on.
Well, I think the one that's got me the most surprised, Garrett, and I'll just fill in our listeners because I think it's slightly breaking news, is there's been a couple positive cases in Tokyo, if you've been paying attention to the Olympics, and some of them have hit the beach volleyball world enough that Taylor Crabb and Jake Gibb for the United States qualified for the Olympics, and Taylor is actually ineligible, and they'll have to make a sub here. So you watch the NBA playoffs, you watch Major League Baseball, it looks like the U.S. defeated COVID. Like, they're playing in front of full stadiums, they're doing all this stuff, but them out of all teams have had to make a COVID sub. So now Taylor Crabb's not an Olympian, and Tri Bourne is getting the call, and they play Sunday against Italy with a brand new partner, Jake Gibbs. So it just shows that we're still on the tail end of what it was a weird COVID year and a half, 2 years now, that it's actually affected the Olympics.
That is unbelievable to me. I mean, like, it's wild. I mean, COVID's still a risk, but like, damn, somebody getting COVID. You guys, like, I haven't had to deal with that, but like, coming back to playing sport, like, that's a huge reality you got to deal with. Like, you got to make sure people aren't getting COVID, but you got to compete at some level too. Like, man, I feel for that guy for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? Like, you spend so much time working on that, and it gets delayed by a year, and now you get there, and you're ineligible, and you really have no control over it, right? Like, and then who's he in contact with? Is there quarantining going on for that? Are they missing training days? And I'm wondering now, though, if there isn't a little bit of pressure released, because now you've got a new partner. So what are the expectations now at this point?
That's an interesting point that I hadn't have thought about. It's like, hey, Tri Bourne subbing in. He's playing with house money. Like, let's go get a freaking medal here, bud. Like, let's do it, which, I mean, is a valid point. But I also think when you say that, Steve, like, you know, Dad, we know when you go on tour, you're like, who do you train with? You're like, you're talking, okay, who? Now, is there a concern, hey, I'm not going to maybe train with those guys because they're running around. They're not being safe with COVID. Like, is that a thought now as well? Like, what kind of a world are we living in these days?
I think it definitely has to be. If anyone follows Phil Dalhouser on Instagram, he mentioned that because he was considered a close contact, he actually had to do a modified quarantine. So for the last 5 days, he wasn't allowed to leave his room. So now this guy's prepping for the Olympics to play a match, and he's gotten basically one on-court session and one lift-in. So it's affecting the schedule on so many layers here that this is supposed to be the peak of a lot of guys' careers, and they're dealing with a lot of last-minute stuff. You're right, Garrett. Do you only train with your partner instead of partnering with another team because you don't know what they're up to? What's the dining hall situation? Like, can you isolate from people? Like, are people wearing masks? Are they not wearing masks? I have no idea what the village looks like, but it's just, it seems to affect beach volleyball in a big way. I don't know if it's affecting other sports as well.
All right, well, we got two coaches on here who are running practices. Correct me, guys. You're both down at the beach running practices. I mean, are we being safe for COVID, you two guys? Like, do we have it together? I mean, Dad, I seen you down there. I'm not sure we're following all the protocols.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know there were protocols. So I'm double vaccinated, and so are the athletes that I'm training with. And
that's good news. I mean, congrats on that. Your COVID upgrade. Do you have superpowers?
I think the reality is here. The COVID cases are going down, and things are opening up, and I guess there's still people that are catching the virus, and that's going to continue. We're going to continue to see that. We're trying to be somewhat careful, I think. But to be honest with you, I think now that the restrictions have somewhat loosened, and nobody's suggesting we shouldn't be on the beach training. We're going at it. This is the first I heard that it's hit Crab, which is just terrible because I believe it's his first Olympics, right? With Jake, and you know what, they have a very interesting chemistry, that team. It's more than a wild card. You're bringing in, that it never really works, but who knows?
So you're thinking that like, hey, it's not going to work. That team now is just done.
Well, I wouldn't be. I don't see them as a big threat. No.
So what do they do if everybody gets COVID? Right? Like if like half the team say have a COVID scare.
I feel like in beach volleyball, right? Like you can't make a sub partway through. So if me and Steve start and I get COVID after the first game, I think we're out of the tournament.
Well,
like,
no. If you and Steve are together and you get COVID, I think we're all happy, and Steve's eager for a sub in that partnership.
Yeah. I think once you play a game, though, in beach volleyball, that's the team. It's not like an indoor team where you go down the list and now like maybe you lose your right side and someone else subs in. I think the team is then incomplete if the tournament started, and they would be DQ'd the rest of the way, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah, there's no subbing after the tournament starts. It's over.
Man, that's got to be so weird. And like, I guess everybody now has got to be super careful when they're out there in Tokyo in the training. Like, I haven't been a part of a training environment where we've had to really like take that like with masks and you're doing that whole thing. Like, Steve, have you done many practices with like the full on like COVID gear and stuff? Like, is it different?
Yeah. So there's two pieces. So obviously, at Brock, when we were training, we had to, sanitize everything.
Right.
The gym was like cleaned. We were wearing, in the beginning, we weren't wearing masks. Then we were wearing masks. Coaches were always wearing masks. And we were also wearing a shield. So mask and shield. Now at the beach, because I'm training here for the Hurricanes program at Trinity, we've got a health check before we get in. We had that at Brock too. So you have to fill out the app and answer all the questions, which is standard. You have to wear your mask into the beach facility. And then the athletes come in one side, and then the coaches come in the other side. We're not wearing masks while we're training. We're trying to remain a certain amount of distance. And it is beach, so it is outdoor, so it's a little less risky. But we're looking to go back indoor in about 2 weeks here at Brock. And some of the other OUA schools, it's all over Instagram, they're already back indoors. So, and you're not allowed to basically tell anyone to get vaccinated. But, I know that most of the people that I'm dealing with are planning to do it, and some of them already have, right?
So you're wearing a full mask and a full shield to coach. They're wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So you're yelling like this to try to turn a point across. Like, and it's like, what? Yeah, like, that's got to be just kind of annoying,
awful.
Isn't it?
Absolutely awful. It's hard because the other thing too, right, is like there's so much more communication than just your words, right? Your facial expression. Like, I can be using and raising my voice, and if I have a smile on my face, you take it one way. But if you can't see my smile, I better learn to smile with my eyes pretty good, which, is either neither here nor there. But like it definitely hurts the communication with your athletes and their communication back to you.
Yeah, I think you're probably okay with that though, Dad, because you're just yelling 100% of the time anyway. So we're fine there, right?
You know what? This isn't something to be mocked, but it's such a if you're entering the facility, Steve, and I mean this in all due respect, from two different entrances, but you come in and nobody's wearing a mask, it's like, well, It's really good you came in through a different door. Like,
yes,
yes. Like it's just all sort of pretty confusing, and but it's a scary thing. A lot of people have died from this disease, so it's, we want to get back to some sense of where we're not thinking about it in every action we take. So to be honest with you, it's not something that's really on my mind when I'm running a training session.
Right.
I do look over and I see Josh Nickel and Felipe wearing their masks outside.
Their bandana. You're rocking a full bandana, Josh, right?
I wear the mask and then I cover it because when you talk, the mask moves. So I want it to be snug, because what's the point of wearing a mask? Like, if you watch the NHL coaches, they had to wear masks, but their noses were out half the time. So why are you even wearing it?
Yeah, but is it not more for style? Like, you look pretty badass out there, Josh, with the full-on bandana on there. Like, I don't see anybody else repping the style on the mask like that, okay? That's a Team Canada coach right there.
people. I wish we could get a mask on you. Maybe.
Well, it looks like we have a mask on you because your screen keeps blurring up. I don't know what the hell's going on there.
Well,
but
it could be something related to the conversation because it's a bit blurry where this is going.
It's trying to filter you
camera
between
has
us. There it
COVID.
goes again.
Yeah,
We can't even see it. You're back.
I've got years of experience with Steve here, and we're talking about some recent thing of COVID. Like COVID's old news, isn't it? Like I know we're on it, but are we not?
You're challenging the show. We're 5 minutes into the flipping show, and you're already trying to undermine the host here.
I'm not challenging the show, but we're just going to start popping off of these. What is completely It almost feels unscientific how we're dealing with COVID when it's a purely scientific thing. Like it doesn't even make logical sense, and I think science is somewhat logical.
Popping off is what we do best on this show. It's really all we do.
Back to the Olympics and the fact that it's the younger crab, is it? Or it's definitely the shorter crab that plays with Gibb. Very energetic, powerful player, great defense, like very exciting to watch. And Gibbs, no spring chicken, that's for sure. He's up
This
there.
has got to be his last. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's still
Third games, I think, for him.
Yeah, and he's bringing amazing intensity when he plays. Like he's still, it's fascinating to watch him, but it's very sad that this thing's gotten in the way of that.
Well, and I feel like we head into the Olympics, right? And we're all, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be watching as intently as I can. It feels like it's going to be a bit of a theme here. I mean, we're seeing it with some of these, I mean, we're seeing a player getting COVID, but is this maybe, that's going to be just a huge shadow over the whole tournament? I mean, already on the men's side, a team has already been compromised and has to make a sub, but I mean, hopefully as this goes, we don't see any more, but certainly the restrictions and managing it is going to be a huge theme for dealing with the tournament. We talked with Mark last week when you had that super important boat trip, Dad, about, the focus at the Olympics and making sure that you kind of accept the distractions. I mean, I feel like in this case, COVID is kind of taken over rather than media and all this other crap for the major distraction. I don't know, you guys' thoughts on that?
Wow.
Well, sorry, I just want to hop in and correct myself. This is Jake Gibbs' fourth games. Good for him. He was in Beijing, he was in London, and he was in Rio. So this guy, he's putting together a pretty good career, Garrett. I didn't think Jake Gibbs was talking about the all-time list, but four-time Olympian. Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, thanks for correcting yourself because we're wrong often on this show, and we just let it hang out there. And nobody's called us yet.
I didn't want Mark to send a message because I tried to call Mark out on stuff, so I didn't want him to listen to this episode and have like the comment section going off with like, actually, according to my research, this is what happened. So he's on that stuff, Garrett. So
all right,
well, and then when you talk about COVID taking over, well, let's not have it take over this show. I've only got an hour.
You know what? Isn't there? Okay, wow. Gosh.
That was good, eh? That was good. That just stopped you right in your
sharp
tracks.
cuts, but sharp cuts at the show? Damn it. I don't know if I can take it.
No, it's not the show. You just talked about COVID taking over, and I think it's not that it's run its course.
Well, speaking of taking over, I think you're trying to take over the show right now, aren't you?
No, I'm just happy to talk to Steve. I haven't seen or heard about Steve's career, and I'd love to hear more about what's going on with Steve Delaney.
Well, I guess you did miss the production
the listeners
meeting.
In. There's got to be a history here, Garrett. So, Steve, what's your first memory of John May? Well, let's just cover it from the beginning, and we can fast forward here. But there's got to be a moment that stands out, Steve.
So John May was still playing, and he was playing, I believe, with Walt Zanell. And at that time, I think it was an OVA tournament, and they had just won the weekend before in Wasaga. And I don't remember how they did, but I remember hearing about John May, the King, and Walt and all that. And then I think it was the same summer something happened. He wasn't playing with Walt anymore. And I actually got to play the King, and he was playing with Positini. Remember that, John? I was playing with John Hong.
Oh, yeah. I definitely remember that.
It was OVA Provincials. I don't know how old you were, but I was, in my early 20s at the time. And then my fonder memory of John is the guy who brought beach volleyball back to Canada. Like, not to toot his horn, I know, Garrett, it'll make you throw up in your mouth a little bit, but your dad was a pretty big influence on beach volleyball in Canada, right? So, through the opportunity he granted a lot of us to kind of learn the game and travel across Canada playing it. And so those are my early memories of John, amongst all the wonderful nights we had, in like Alberta or Vancouver or wherever we were Graham Ben, I remember him we were singing a song about him, and he's walking back and forth on the street past the window so that we don't stop singing. So there's a hotel room of like 30 people. I don't know how we got 30 people, and there's one John May outside, and he just kept walking back. And Lawrence Bishop's brother is on the guitar singing a song about John, and he's walking away, and he's walking back, and it must have happened like 20 times in the middle of and it's got to be like 10 o'clock at night in Grand Bend, and John said he was going home, he's back and forth. So there's a bunch of good memories there.
Oh, Steve, I'll never forget that. That was very funny. Yeah, there was some amazing memories of that tour where, a lot of people sort of got their start in beach volleyball. But, just to fast forward it a bit and talk about the FIVB and the World Tour and your experience on the World Tour. I remember when the tour touched down in Quebec. Was it Quebec City? Might have been Quebec City. Yeah. Or when you played with Rich, and it was very exciting to watch you and Rich battle it out. I don't remember exactly your finish, but I think was that your first FIVB event?
No, I'd played in a few, but that was like the first like main draw I'd gotten right into, right?
Yeah.
And it was I was like the Thai crab, right? Like something. Conrad's mom unfortunately had just passed away, and so I didn't know. But you guys, hey, want to come to the beach? Like, sure. We come to the beach, and it's like John May and like myself and 3 other guys. And I didn't know this was like a tryout for what was going on. We didn't even have the conversation about what was up. And I remember, unfortunately, I was not at home when I got the like call from Rich, it was a text message like, "Hey Steve, do you want to fly out and play with me? This is Tuesday." I think we started playing on like the Thursday. He's like, "Do you want to fly out and play?" I'm like, "Man, you told me that's what this whole tryout thing was about. Like, I would have handled the last 4 days till now a little different because okay, my wife, and she was my fiance at the time, she was my wife, was away with her friend in Portugal. So I was having a few more beverages than I would have normally if I knew if I was playing in an FIVB tournament on the weekend in the main draw. So yeah.
Well, that maybe helped you. I don't know. Like, I mean, you keep it loose.
It didn't help. It didn't help. That's for sure.
But what a dynamic player you were. You had the greatest arm swing of all time. I remember that, and you certainly had some hops, and you were one of those probably more physical athletes than were around at the time. I know obviously Rich was a big monster, but you, for a relatively normal sized person, brought a lot of physicality to the game and a great arm, like a bombing, from the left side, great wrist. And you were fun to watch. And I it's the memories, it goes back so long ago, but there were some really exciting times, and you had a great playing career. Now, I'm going to fast forward, not to take over, but I want to ask you about
not
Brock.
To take over, but then take over. I mean, go for it.
But how are you enjoying Brock? Like, it was so exciting for me to see you take that over, having had a good club career, and then because Brock had a bunch of talented athletes, and they just never were able to really break through. And then you've taken that over, and I know you were in the top Final Four, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, we had a good season last year. I mean, the heartbreaking piece is that we made it to nationals for the first time in program history, and then the COVID canceled it. And I dealt with a lot of tears, and I had some myself, and it was really tough because we got basically sent home. But you know what? I'm enjoying it. I coaching women it's very rewarding in the fact that like you really realize, because it's such a more technical game, that you have to delve into the technical aspects of it. And as a guy, when I was playing, if you couldn't do it one way, you just tried to do it with strength the other way. So it's really been enlightening for me to be kind of like a lifelong learner and keep learning on new technical ways to train athletes and how to get through and communicate and what motivates them. And they're all different people. So, getting through to one person one way doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get to the same results by handling it the same way with a completely different personality. So it's been great. I love it. I'm looking forward to, what we've got ahead of us. I've been doing it this is my 3rd year. So, recruiting after COVID, during COVID. You don't know what you're going to get. There's a backlog now because you've got some fifth years. You've got an extra year. You've got people doing victory laps in high school. You've got a whole bunch of different variables that are now coming into play. But it's an awesome experience, and I hope I can do it for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's so nice, guys. Like, I mean, Dad, I mean, your comments and Steve, super nice. Great, Steve. I mean, gosh, like this Sharp Cuts has turned into pillow fight, and I mean, amazing. I mean, amazing, yes. Everybody. I mean, yes, Steve, yes. It's got to be a huge challenge, though, coming back, I'm sure, with the COVID situation. Like, is your team going to be, like, super deep? Because you got like fifth years coming back, and then you got like people who didn't want to leave, and then you got the recruits coming in, or like, are you like, no, I'm screwed. I had graduate. Like, what? Like, how do you manage that? Because you don't know what you're getting coming in really, because you haven't had a chance to see them. Some of these athletes, their last year was basically nothing.
Right, and what you have is a lot of athletes coming in who've been playing against athletes of their own age for a long period of time. Right, they might play a year up, maybe. Right, and now they're going to come in and they're going to play against young women. Right. And that's a big piece. But one of the biggest pieces that I didn't really know was a thing until COVID hit was something I kind of like came up with the term performance currency, which for me is like there's a pecking order in everything that you do when there's actual matches to be played. It goes to like who's on the A side, who's on the B side, who's traveling this weekend, who's dressing, who starts, who gets on the court. And without that, everyone's equal. And so you've got some people coming in that they don't get the basics of like, this is what you do, this is what you never do. The little things can easily become big things, which can be big problems. And there's none of that performance currency, which naturally keeps people in line. So that is a piece where we've missed, for the past year. And I'm looking forward to being able to get that back, because it does a lot of the kind of natural, organization of who's doing what and how do you need to perform and how do you need to train and how do you need to do all the right things off the court to be like the people who are performing all the time, right? So I'm glad to get that back. And as like I have eight rookies basically now that are all have never played a university match. So it's like, okay, we've got to really fast track that learning process. So, but again, I'm in no different shape than most of the coaches in the OUA. I think if I'm calculating it right, most rosters in the OUA will be 19, 20, some 21. I think I counted Western maybe at like 23, 24. And this isn't in stone, but yes.
Those are huge, man.
I know, but you can only dress 14, right? But
you can have like 10 red shirts. That's like a Garrett May team we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it, and people will fall off, but others are coming back, right? Because they want to do a minor, maybe they want to do a master's, and now they have a year of eligibility. So, and then think about if you're coming out of high school and you're like, okay, I've done the math on my depth chart, and I know that this person who's in front of me is probably leaving in a year. Now they're leaving in 2 years, right? And it's like, okay, does that change where I go to university? Maybe. Does it change the scholarship money? Like, what about all those athletes who've maybe been promised an AFA for 4 or 5 years, and now they're going to be at the school for 6?
Yeah.
There's a lot of athletic directors going, oh, how are we going to handle this?
Yeah. Man. So your what would you say, performance currency? That's an interesting. We got to maybe take that on this show and have some pecking order on this show, because I think it would really help some of our guests really fall in line. So I'm just kind of curious to understand more about that. So you're saying like when you play matches, who gets the time on the court naturally sets an expectation for the players and where they really should be. And with COVID, you're having no matches or very few matches. You're not really getting that. So you have these kind of players who maybe would be lower on the depth chart thinking, hey, I'm not a bench player. I mean, we haven't played a game. Like I get to do these things. Whereas some of these older players who maybe had that performance currency previously are now saying, no, beat it. And that's where you get conflict.
You're right. But yeah, there's that, but there's also the piece of this. Let's say John starts the match, right? And let's say John doesn't have a great match and Garrett gets sucked in and Garrett has a great match.
Well, I'll stop you right there. There's no way I'm starting on the bench, Steve. Come on. I mean, like Josh is coming off the bench for when John is struggling.
Got it. Because you're already on the court.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Performance currency, right?
Got it. So now John may lose a little bit of performance currency, but then Josh gains it. And now what is the effect that has amongst the team? Josh is going back to the change room, getting high fives, whatever. Are people picking up John? Like, that's the whole thing. Are they trying to build him up? And the same thing happens in practice as well, right? Like, for us, we have an A side and a B side. And boy, you want to spend your time getting to the A side. And when you get there, you want to try to stay there as long as possible. So matches, there's a trickle down from when you have matches over that time period. And without that, and it's the same in club as well, right? You're not going on the road. It's, there's a little bit more fair play involved in certain club, but that's the same thing for all the club coaches out there. They haven't had their performance currency either. So,
that's so, I don't envy you at all, because it's tough enough to manage that whole hierarchy and systems when you have 14 athletes. But if you're talking about having 21 and having to pick every week who's dressing, and what a nightmare. And you can't really just make decisions and cut people, because they come with a bunch of credentials, like you're saying, right? So wow, that I didn't even think in that context, Steve, of how challenging that would be at the university level right now.
So we can expect though that at college and university it's going to be a wild year. Like, it's going to be maybe a crazy year. Like, you're going to have teams, you have no idea who they are. They got 23 players, some of them, like, figuring it out kind of. You got players who are maybe redshirting or sitting who, like, could play and get time later. Like, who knows, right? Like, could be epic.
Anybody could win. And it's interesting, if you think about Steve Delaney,
well, we're talking
how many did you coach that? How many years did you coach that club you were coaching?
Hurricanes 4.
Yeah, because that was like, I was out of the system. Like, Crush was finished at that point. So you started, like, I don't think we were. So you 4 years there, like you kind of evolved into this coach, and then you got the job at Brock, and you know what, that was a pretty impressive. I don't know if you would have been the coach of the year or whatever, but you took that team from, like you said, nowhere to be what it is. So you obviously have established yourself with some currency, but I'm wondering else, who is there? Like, these people that have been around forever, like McMaster, like, and Dave Preston, like, what's he doing? He's probably got like 50 guys. Like, what are those established coaches that have been around forever? They must just be sick of it. I'd retire.
Are you taking a shot at Steve's performance currency and saying he doesn't stack up with some of these more established coaches?
No, I'm saying Steve is probably above and beyond most of those coaches, because he's brought some street cred to, what he's doing, certainly on the women's side anyway. And it was an impressive move. And, they had some talented athletes there. There's no question about it.
So wait, hold on, Steve. Was your first year the year, Dad, you were coaching at York?
No,
he was gone.
I left.
He heard you were coming and then ran, right?
I never. There can only be one. I don't even know, Maverick in the system, so I had to get out and let Steve take over that.
There we go.
Oh man, yeah. So it's gonna be a wild year. That's exciting to hear, though. Like, I mean, if you're a fan watching, like, hey, tune in. Like, could be some crazy stuff you're seeing with these massive teams.
Yep, and there's like, other things like, are you allowed to travel? Like, usually you travel with the men and women's team travel together. Well, now they're talking about different buses, right? So now your roster travel numbers are going to be less. So, if you look at a program like, the MAC, they have a lot of athletes, they have a lot of coaches. They probably won't be able to travel with the team in the way they have in the past, right? So, how can you adjust? And what moves are you going to make to make sure that you can put your best product on the floor each and every night? So, it's a challenge budgetarily and in a number of different things, right? Like, what they've done is, I don't know if I was talking to Josh a little bit about this earlier, but what they've done is they've separated the East and the West, so they won't play each other. And what'll happen is you're going to play all the games in your conference, and then the other conference play all the games in their conference. The only time you'll ever see, we'll see someone from the East is if we play them in the final of the OUA playoffs, right? Which is completely different, right? Just completely different.
Wow. That seems kind of wild, though, given that, like, you're like cutting the conference in half. How many teams are in the conference anyways?
So there's 7 in each.
Yeah, like
right?
you're seeing 7 teams anyways. Like, I mean, you're going and having all these contacts with anyway. I mean, not that hey, you're right, Dad. We're not gonna get critical on that, but that, I mean, yeah, like it's a total mystery what's happening over there.
Well, I think the thing we all need to realize is, John said it the best. It's like, you're coming in one side, you're going out the other side, and then you're on the court together. Like, think about it one step further. These athletes are probably coming in the same car together. Some of them are going home. If you're at university, you live with the other people. You're dating some people on the men's or the women's team. You could be dating people on the football team or the basketball team or whatever. So I believe the biggest thing that these institutions are looking for is they want to protect their backside legally, right? And that's what it all comes down to, right?
Yeah, and in that in the system right now, it's kind of like it's clogged it up. So there's the athletes that are going to have to. Well, there's some that are going to suffer through this. You're not going to get the play time. You may not even make the team. It's going to be tough on the sport. It's going to have a broader effect on the sport. But like anything, the cream will rise to the top. The best athletes. It'll just be a little bit more cutthroat and disappointing for those, athletes coming out of club or what have you. It's an unfortunate reality.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to keep your performance currency close to your vest. I'm curious, Steve. Like, you've intrigued me with this concept. I'm sorry I keep coming back to it. Is it something you write down? Like, are you keeping track? Is it an informal thing? Like, is it a physical currency?
I mean, it's always been there, but
can I buy some of it?
I need some. Like, can you exchange for dollars?
It's Bitcoin.
It's a new crypto.
It's a cryptocurrency, performance currency.
So
that's right.
I think that we all knew it was there, but we didn't realize it until it wasn't there, right? And then you're like, why does this athlete think they're so entitled in this situation? And you're like, oh, because you don't realize that you might hit a ball and bounce it really well in practice. But if you were to go, 1 for 8 on swings in a match and get subbed out, you'd start thinking again about what you need to do to get better. Instead, we're not keeping, maybe that drill we're not statting. So you get that one big kill, everyone goes, woo! And then you're great, right? But you're not looking at the numbers. You're not doing that stuff. What I started doing, especially coming into playoffs, is a concept called the error board. And I know Josh and I have talked about this. And this is a way of the currency. It's like you're actually tracking the unforced errors an athlete makes, which puts more pressure on them. But also it's on the board, so the rest of the team is seeing it, right? And the currency is this. Like if Josh is having a perfect match and, John's got, 6 errors on, 8 attempts, and he gets the call in the court the next day, either the coach is silly or there's not enough currency or something's going on, right? So it's a real big piece, I think, that I'm welcoming back in my gym is the whole competition and match piece, because I think it helps the athletes want to get better because they're more realistic in their abilities.
Great to hear you describe this, Steve, because Garrett, you're not a big guy on like rookie duties or this guy takes the water bottle. Like, everybody fills up their own water bottle. But I think just understanding where you are in the team and if you need to work harder, competition's great feedback for that, right? So, Garrett, I don't think you're saying that we need like, oh, if you don't start, you're a bench player, you carry the jerseys. I don't think that's why you want performance currency. I think you want performance currency just so people know where they're at in the depth chart, right? Is that kind of what you're saying, Garrett?
Well, like Steve's saying, the error tracking, like, but the coach has a piece to play in that as well. Like, I made the most errors on my team, but I'm getting set 100 times, 50 times in a match, right? So, like, somebody's looking at that, they're going, well, okay, Garrett's carrying us, but then somebody else has got 3 errors. Like, what does that mean for them? Like, the coach is then involved in making a judgment about some of these things as well as the players kind of filling out their pecking order. I'm kind of curious, because obviously you must deal with some stress and with people going, hey, Steve, what are you doing? Like, are you helping me be successful? Did you coach your best game? I mean, I know when I was a player, like, I was definitely involved in that, like in my 3rd and 4th years as a senior guy. I got a lot of performance currency. I'm looking at my coach going, what are you doing? Like, get your shit together, basically. But have you experienced with that, and are like, is that something we're trying to learn and grow with as well? Because like, we don't always make the right decisions as coaches. Like, I definitely didn't.
Yeah, we make mistakes all the time, and like, I've had athletes challenge me, and I'll usually come up and say, well, here's why I made this decision. Here's the numbers that support the decision I made. By the way, here are your numbers, and see what I did. I gave you the same performance currency I gave this player to keep them on the court. So just, it can be very impactful if it's used, correctly, right?
It's interesting. I would never use that in my experience as a coach.
So somebody comes to you though, Dad, and says, "Hey, you put so-and-so in, like Josh is sitting on the bench. I mean, classic. Steve's in there, and Steve's, I don't know, he's having a rough game. And Josh goes, hey, John, why, am I not getting a chance here? You're not going to say, well, actually, your numbers are garbage.
Well, I look at it much, much differently. I think the coach is probably the most important member of the team. In the sense, because the coach is making the decisions, and you can choose to put one athlete in versus another. You choose who's there, and you have to manage the whole ecosystem. Now you're not actually touching the ball, but you're orchestrating the execution. And it's one of the things that I've never been that fond of is the national team using statistics and different, compiling the research and the information and making decisions or using those maybe as reasons of why they didn't pick somebody over the other. You can look at our own national team. Glenn Hoag coaches the national team, right? And his son is on the team. Now, I'm sure that's come up in somewhere, somehow, his decision making, but it's his son. Can you remove it? But he's a coach. He's been successful to, Volleyball Canada's, judgments. So I think the indoor game is very much like being part of a society that you don't have complete control. That's what makes the beach so attractive, because it's up to the athlete. There's nobody deciding for you.
So I guess then your explanation to that player then is, well, hey, I'm the coach. I'm making the decision that I think is going to help us be successful. I mean, we review that and deal with that all the time. Deal with it, basically.
Well, no, you don't just throw somebody under the bus and say deal with it. You manage that. That's part of being the coach. And I think what Steve's talking about with this currency is he uses that currency to assemble discipline and structure and makes the management of that much more scientific. And he's saying without that, it's way tougher. And I can see what he's saying. So I can, I understand why you want it back. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's about the currency, because you decide how much that currency is worth and what it is. And you might create structures like counting somebody's mistakes or whatever it is you're doing to support your decision making. So I like the classification of it, but it's just a word that's being put on your decision making theory.
I think the big piece for me, though, when it comes to an athlete managing their own expectations, if you have stats, if you have performance currency backing what you're saying, you can get them to buy in the fact that they need to improve in this area. It could be a skill. It could be the way they approach a game, right? So that's where it's like the athlete has a false kind of impression of where they are in the depth chart because there's no performance currency, and they don't necessarily work at getting better at the things they need to, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm losing power. I apologize.
I mean, that's it. We had enough. Okay, I'm going to quickly segue then. Well, I mean, it just leaves it going. I mean, how unprofessional is that? This is sharp cuts to a T. Comes on the show, chirps the show, disagrees with our guests, then leaves it. Okay, anyways, segueing. Josh, and we got a couple of coaches on, some high-performance coaches. I'm not going to include myself. And he leaves the frickin' call. Oh my gosh, that is probably the worst thing for this show possible. It's gonna piss me off. Anyways, Josh,
when he come back?
Well, we got Steve here because we no longer got my biological father. Oh, hey, welcome back. You know what? Not even gonna. No. Okay. How unprofessional is that? You leave the call mid thing. You're screwing up the tech. For our listeners that you can't see the show, John May just left the call and then came back, like thinking he's got the performance currency to behave like this on our show. Are you kidding me?
Just put him in a virtual timeout for about 15 seconds. Don't let him speak. Mute him, and then all's right in the world. And his performance currency will be right.
You can manage that.
I can't actually. That's my mistake. I will own that.
No, you can say.
I actually can't do that with this setup. I will own that fully. Discipline is not a strong suit here on Sharp Cuts. I was in the middle of segueing while you were disrupting the program there, Dad. Because, I mean, we've been running sessions. I've been running some beach sessions myself, keeping the distance and stuff like that with just one athlete, so it's been a lot easier. But I'd come down to the beach. So if our longtime listeners know, I'd come down to the beach. I'm looking over Tuesday mornings, bright and early, 7 a.m. I roll into the beach. Around 8 a.m., I'm watching the national team roll in, which is Josh Nichols' group, right? And then a little bit later on, I'm seeing John May and his other group kind of roll in to start their training. But Josh, I'm curious to get these guys' thoughts. I look over, and I'm judging because I'm kind of an ego guy, so I'm judging. And I see your session, Josh. These guys, you're not here yet. They're lazing around with the net set up. They're just taking their sweet time. They're doing like this, like these guys do this weird stretch thing that really does nothing. Like they're doing this weird, whenever you see a guy with hands clasped to his chest, like twisting his body, you're like, okay, dude, like, are you even warm? What are you doing? Then I see them get out the tablet, like they're working with the tablet. Like, what's going on here? It's about a half an hour before they actually even started doing anything, like moving their feet, jogging, ball, whatever. Kind of curious your thoughts on the start of practice, and really, like, are we okay to ease into it if we just take a bit more time, or really is it arrival and go?
I'm glad you asked instead of passing judgment without having any information.
I'm secretly passing judgment for sure. Secretly, that's why I asked, so I can pounce on it.
Absolutely. That team.
See, you see a guy again like that. Our listener can't see. Yeah, that's what you can't do that. Yep. Sorry, Josh, I interrupted.
So the team in question, they played their first event since COVID started, Garrett. So they've been off for a little bit. So they played a 2-day event, and they did very well in it. And they played 6 matches in 2 days. So the original proposal was they in their mind decided that they wanted to take Monday off, Tuesday off, Wednesday off, and return to training on Thursday, where me being the interim coach of the national team, no effing way are you playing 2 days and then taking 3 days off. That's just a low performance decision.
You know what? No, hey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, whoa, I'm not done here yet. But as you can see, Garrett, they were not happy with this decision. So at 8 o'clock practice, yes, were they in a rush to get set up? Were they dialed in and ready to get better that practice? No, but I think that was the ripple effect of like, no, I had to be the heavy and be like, no, we're training. I'll see you Tuesday at 8. That was maybe them trying to take the power back, or maybe take some currency back from the environment and say, oh, if we have to be here, like, am I really like net set up at 8, balls out at 8? Like, no, they kind of, it was a little bit of pushing, but that's the backstory of that, Garrett, is that they wanted some time off, and it was not granted. They were given Monday. They were not going to be given 3 days. So
I appreciate
that's why
that
what you saw was a bit laissez-faire of like, it was just them two. It was just their team at practice, right? We didn't have a group session. It was just them. So that's the backstory. Where the optics of it, I'm sure, were terrible, but I feel like I got a win out of it in our periodization and our planning, because we went. So that's kind of what you saw was true, but the backstory is, we had to go that day, and that's why it was kind of meh.
Context is everything, man. I'm glad you said that. But now I'm curious. We got 2 high performance coaches here. Well, I mean, we have 3. But we have 2 guests on the show. Curious your guys' thoughts on that. Like, because I know, Dad, when you show up at practice, like, it's go time. And it kind of was when Josh arrived too. Like, when Josh arrived, it was kind of go time. But Steve as well, your perspective, like when you walk in the gym, like, what's the situation, and what are we doing with it if it's not what you need?
Yeah, I mean, especially, again, not to bring COVID back into it, but like your gym time gets cut a little bit because you have to do so much cleaning and all the protocols, right? So if you waste a minute, you're not getting better in that minute.
Okay.
So it's about your attitude coming into practice. You need to be ready to go, and it's a little different too sometimes, because I'll have athletes running from class, right? So they got to get ready, and they got to get taped, and they got to do all that stuff. So it's a little bit different, because you also have a team usually, or like an intramural or someone where the gym is scheduled. Now down at the beach, I think it's a scenario where, like, you're all there, you're all on the clock basically, and you're all got valuable, things to do later on in your day, unless maybe you don't.
Unless you don't.
Just unless you're a beach volleyball guy and all you got to do is, I got to just come to the beach, do my practice. Maybe I'll lift, maybe I won't. But you as a coach, I know Josh has got other stuff he's got to do. You know, Garrett, you've got, video games to develop. You're a busy guy.
So many.
John's doing whatever he's doing afterwards. So time is valuable, right? When he's not napping.
Yeah, or on a boat trip. Yeah. So, okay, so you come down to the beach, you two guys, because I know you guys lay the law down. Steve Delaney and John May, I know you will lay the law. You come down to the beach. I don't mean to, throw Josh under the bus, but I kind of do, but I don't. You come down to the beach, Dad, and say Jake and Will, who you're coaching, they're not ready. They're fooling around, which, I mean, they sometimes do. Are you, giving them a hard time? Or, what's the strategy here?
Well, I don't.
Tough question.
You know what? No, it's not a tough question. It's we're dealing with high performance athletes, and obviously we've had conversations before you arrive, and you set certain standards and expectations of what people are doing. There's a time and a place for all of these things, and I think your comments about the context under which athletes are bringing to the table, but you know what? I do agree that, there's a time and a place for everything. And depending on how you set things up, I like to say, I like the athletes to be ready to compete, warm themselves up to a certain degree physically, but warm yourself up mentally so you're prepared when I arrive at 8 o'clock or at, whatever time the scheduled practice is, call it 8 to 10. I expect the athletes to be ready to compete at that point. Now, running them through physical warm-up drills could still incorporate, a lot of mental intensity. So that's my expectation with the athletes, and everybody knows that. You better come prepared to compete or, you're not ready, and that'll just be brought to your attention. But it's not like making demands or yelling at people or, and I certainly don't do that. And Steve, I found it very interesting, the comment you made about you can be saying something and smiling, and when your mouth is covered, it's a different context. And it's so important to earn the right to expose somebody to themselves. And that's really what you're doing in coaching. I think the art of coaching is really understanding and building trust with an athlete so you can help them take a real hard look at themselves, right? So, if somebody's not, and I'm coaching Julian Shanice now, which is
Is this breaking news? You're coaching Julian Shanice?
What? I am, yeah. I'm coaching them, and I'm coaching Will and Jake. And we're going to see how this goes. But I'm committed to their success, and I'm trying to do just that, earn their trust so that I can open them up to themselves. Because obviously, if you're in a rut or you're not in the place you want to be, you probably don't know why or you'd be there. So that's what the coach is doing, is helping them expose. It was interesting. I was privileged to hear Josh interact with Sergey and Chris. And Sergey was going through this evaluation of his serve receive and, how he moves towards a ball. And it was quite scientific. And it was very interesting to me to watch the journey he was on and how Josh chose to approach it. And, it was the first time I'd really watched you coach, Josh. And I found it.
Well, and what do you think?
I found it interesting.
Okay. Is that a good, or is that a bad, or is that a?
Well, of course it's all good. He's out there coaching. He's out there helping Sergey.
No, that's going on the resume. John May said about Josh Nichols coaching, it's all good. I mean,
endorsed.
Josh, take it to the bank. I mean, that might actually get you fired if John May thinks you're good. If actually, get it.
Oh. I think his name holds too much weight in the community, Garrett, to get me fired. I think that's a big endorsement.
The greatest thing about this show, Steve, and I've been on it with a couple of people that I haven't had the opportunity to talk to, but it really creates an environment and an opportunity to hear people speak and express themselves on topics that we're all familiar with. But it's so exciting for me to listen to you to express your thing, like this performance currency and the way you would communicate with athletes. Like, I knew just by what's been happening and the energy and the success you've been having, I knew there was something there. And now it's great to just talk to you and sort of get a flavor of what it is that's making you a success. And just some of those comments I found, and I'll use the word interesting again, I find it's nice to hear that, where you've evolved through your career as a volleyball athlete and now coach and person.
Is it good or is it bad? I mean,
No,
interesting is a
that's
great
why I
way to
like the
dodge
show.
that.
That's why I like the show, Garrett. And I wish you'd start to evolve to something that I could be a little bit more proud of.
No. I mean, you're gonna keep on waiting for that. This is.
Oh wow. John, I remember when you were coaching Mark and John, and I would come and train. I don't know whether I was playing with James Gravel or whoever, but I remember like the first at least half hour of practice was like some of the most intense short court that you have, and so I have actually taken that to the Brock girls. I think there's a lot that can be learned in short court, but the biggest part was the competition, and we actually trash talking is mandatory, and part of that is so that when we go to like Guelph or somewhere or Ryerson where they're trash talking and all that type of stuff, where we've had situations where it's been the crowd kind of on us, and Lakehead especially is all about that in terms of like their fan interaction. So I'm just curious, when you guys run your beach practices now, is short court still a thing, or is this generation just away from it? And like, would you still endorse that?
I wouldn't endorse that, but I endorse other versions of the same sort of competitive thing. Things like Volis, things like other games like that, if you will, that really heighten the competitive nature of it. And that was the thing with the short court that John and Mark would play, and it would be like when you're going every day, right, and you're totally invested in this, that short court was a good way to, like I said, get mentally tuned up for the rest of the training session, right? And we had a ton of fun with it, but it was extremely competitive, as you know, right? Like,
so why wouldn't you endorse it anymore, though? Like, if it sounds like it was kind of a positive.
It's not that I wouldn't endorse it, but people just don't play short court as much as they did. But I said I do other things that I would not endorse, but I initiate other types of competitive games like that. It's not that I wouldn't do short court. Of course, if I was down there, like I'm only going twice a week, so but at some point, yes, short court would be part of it. I know with Christina and Jamie, we did start to get into some short court for sure. And it does develop a lot of great things, if you play it enough. Not only your competitiveness, but the way your relationship with the ball. So, yeah, Steve, that's a good example of a game that you got to be mentally ready to do, or you'll just get abused and beaten down, and you might as well not even be playing.
Yeah, I really like it for middles, like indoor. So we'll go 6 people on each side of the court and use the full attack line.
Yeah.
And then, if you ever watch a middle who's like that's not hitting or blocking, whenever they got to do something close to the net and touch the ball, a lot of times they panic. And this is a way to get them to relax. I find there. And didn't Overkill come out with like a special short court net system now? Isn't that
there's a few different products out there for sure.
Free
like
ads.
The short stuff and the quad net and everything.
Yeah. And the cross net too, right? Is another one. Yeah.
Hey, if Overkill wants to sponsor the show, I mean, totally, we're open to that for sure. I totally agree with
find
you,
that-
Steve. Like the short court's hilarious, and I wish people do it more because you get those gangly folks out there. What I do kind of see your point though, Steve, is like you were going out to a session with kind of a team, and it was intense, right? And you were kind of I guess to them, I don't want to get this wrong, but you were kind of an up and comer to challenge them type situation, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were Olympic medalists, and I can tell you this, and I'll say it in public. I mean, I used to tell my athletes this all the time. Like, I'd hit the ball higher. I arguably, I know I was bigger, maybe as fast, but I never beat Mark and John once. I think I'd take a set off them in training here and there, but they just wouldn't allow it. Like, and short court was the same thing. Like, those two guys were just so mentally stable that they just, if you were going to take a match off of them, even in practice, you'd have to, hack their leg off with a machete or something. They just weren't going to let you do that. Right.
So that's what I'm saying is I kind of miss that because like I'm like, you appreciated that and how valuable that was for you to go into that environment and be like, damn, this is like the pressure cooker, like right from the start of practice where it's like I see and when I was playing too, it was the same thing because I guess I stopped maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There just wasn't that like intensity in the training environment. The commitment to like, no, I'm here to win and do my best in every single thing I do, whether that's short court, I'm playing in a match or whatever, that I don't like, I feel like that's kind of a lost piece of like, hey, you go to the best teams, you train with them, you work hard. And if they kick your ass in practice, like you gotta get better. You got to work it. You got to get used to that. I definitely miss that and don't see that as much for sure these days.
Yeah, and we had close matches, but they just always would pull it out, like in training. And the good thing is, like when you did that at the beginning, this is kind of like when you guys were talking about you kind of loafing into practice. If you paid short court, and for a little bit we actually kept track of wins, that takes the intensity up, right? You put it in a Google Doc and give everybody access to it, and then see what happens. So imagine if Mark and John kept short court wins against each other throughout their training days. Like they would be talking about it right now. Somewhere probably still, like for sure. And I think that's a lot, like that actual ability to just take that competition factor and raise it to the roof. People are more worried a little bit about what I did on an individual play and less worried about what the overall outcome of a match is. And I think it's because they're not prepared to compete as well.
Right. I remember Mark and I, when I was like 17, 18 years old, building for that junior world championship, and Mark and I would do the one-on-ones. We would play short court and those kind of corner game. I don't know if you ever played the corner game or the sideline where you just compete one-on-one. And he beat me every time for months. And he's 44, 45 at the time. I think like he's early 40s at the time. And I'm a young 18-year-old guy, and he's still kicking my butt every single time until eventually like, and that was the train. It's like, I got to win on Mark. It was like, oh my gosh. Like, okay, now we're going right for sure. Yeah. I that's so key. I feel like, and I don't know. It's it's tough to recreate though. If say you have one athlete who's just dominating and everybody else is like almost, it's so easy to just give up on that in some ways.
Right. Well, I play in a lot of the short court matches.
Oh yeah, you do.
And that adds a different thing because I just tell them like, you're not beating me, right? I pull a Mark and John on them, and they're like, and that gets them upset, and they try hard. They come close, but to this point, they haven't, and let's hope that stays this way for at least another 10 years.
Okay, so Dad, if you're lining up short court with let's say with Julie and Shanice, you're going short court. Who's coming out on top, 1-on-1, you versus either of them?
1-on-1.
Yeah.
I would probably beat them in short court.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I think we need to sell some tickets to this.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, still I think I'd beat them. But give me another month with them and I wouldn't.
Well, I
don't want to talk openly about Shanice and Julie on the call because they might be listening. But
well, listen, nobody's listening, so I think we can all be rest assured that we're good there.
Well, you know what? People talk about mental toughness. People talk about, I had this discussion because I was down at the beach the other day with a good friend of yours, Dan Deering. And we were just discussing and looking around down there, and we're at a loss You know, you could go ask anybody on the beach and say, hey, give me a comparison. How much of this sport is mental and how much of this sport is physical? And we said probably not one person would say a higher percentage is physical than it is mental. Like everybody says, oh, the game's all mental. Yeah, even if they say it's 60-40, 70-30, 95-5. Everybody says it's mental, but nobody knows how to train mental, right? And I think we're talking about the essence of what's at the foundation of mental toughness, and that is the will and the training of the skill of competing. I'll never forget Christine Drakage. I went to a beach at one of my beach coaching levels. I think it was a level 3 course that was being held. And you had to do run a drill and demonstrate a skill. And I said, well, okay, good. I'm going to do that. And my skill is competing. And we got into this major argument that
you're just being difficult with these people in a way.
No, competing's not a skill.
No, I mean proving a point, but also you knew it would cause a problem.
Competing wasn't a skill to them. And I was like,
right, and you had to die on that hill, I'm sure.
Well, no, I would die on that hill, but competing is a skill. It's more important. It's right up there with passing and serving, for crying out loud. Competing.
Yeah. Did you say it like that? Because, I mean, you've got me convinced.
No, but maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but I think it's very healthy to, it's a component of mental toughness. Your comfort level with actually realizing that you're in a competition. That's what you're doing. So it's okay. All the what do you call that when you take a drug? Help me, guys.
No, you got nothing. You got no one with you here on this one.
No, the side effects. The side effects to the vaccine. What are the side effects? Well, what are the side effects?
Where are we going with this, Dad?
No, but what are the side effects to competing? It has side effects.
Winning and losing are the side effects to competing.
No, you might get upset at yourself. You might lose your self-esteem. You might not be confident. Somebody else might yell at you. You might cry. You might, if you did a thing, hey, try competing, and here's all the side effects to it. People might go, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put something.
So we're making a commercial for like a drug, and it's like, hey, ask your doctor about competing. Side effects may include extreme crying, anger, violence, and even death.
Loss of money.
Yes.
Hey, well, that's what we're talking about here. But my point is this. Everybody thinks the game's mental, but there's really no drills for mental. Like, what are the drills? I got lots of them.
Oh, well, you said there's none, but you got them all.
I got a lot of them.
Okay, so, but all this to say, you're talking about mental toughness. You've got it because you're saying you could beat a current member of our women's beach volleyball national team in short court.
No question. It's not even fair.
All right.
Like Steve's beating his team.
It's not even fair. Like it's not even a question. It's not even fair. Okay, what about if Steve and I team up and come down and take on the team you're coaching, Jake and Will? Who's coming out on top on that one?
In what?
What do you mean in what? In beach volleyball?
No, they crush you guys.
So you are the untouchable in all this, I guess.
No, you're asking unrelevant questions. Me playing short court against Shanice and or Julie is much different than you and Steve playing against Will and Jake. Come on.
I agree. I think we'd actually win.
Wow. You must be really good, Garrett.
Steve's getting up there, Garrett.
Yeah, I'm 45, man.
Yeah, he's 45 years old, man. And he's not playing. Are you kidding?
Playing soccer.
Sorry. Are we using the same argument to say that Steve is incapable of competing, but not focusing on the fact that you are over 60?
I gotta be honest with both of you. I think you're both great athletes, but that it'd be a match. Josh, who do you think would win?
I thought Garrett was leading this towards short court, and I thought they had a chance. If you guys are playing a match, you're not going to win, Garrett.
No, we're not yet, but I'm trying to make a point. Like,
What's your point?
okay, so because it's short court, therefore age is not an issue.
Well, it's a different factor. Steve could definitely beat him in short court.
I think that what John's saying is, well, it's a lower net, first of all, and that's a big piece of it. We probably have a lot more experience about short court, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that physical. It's more about ball control and being able to wipe the block and, being able to give yourself a good set, right? That would be, I think it would still be a battle, but they get better at it, as you kind of intimated earlier, Garrett, with playing Marquise. Like, by the end of it, you figured it out, right? So eventually you hack the drill.
Right. All right, Josh. So you got to basically step out on the short court there and just pummel these guys into submission, I think is the lesson here, right? Like, I mean, if we're taking anything from this show, it's that.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be. Or if John's going to hint that he has all these drills, is that on a cliffhanger, Garrett? Are we going to ask for one of these drills? Like, can he just say he's got all the answers and we don't call him out on it?
No, but it's a bit of a red herring as well. Like, it's a bit of like, I got everything. Like, I can do it,
something
but no,
the
I won't tell
listeners
you.
are fired up for. They're like, ooh, I'm finally going to get something out of the show. And then we just glance over and be like, I'm sure he's got
Yeah, actually, that's the time. The show is over. We've got to end it because
I don't think that Steve should be opening up his great drills. Like what he just said, short court for middles and the way he does it, I guarantee you, if there's any smart coaches on the indoor scene in the university level, they should be doing that, because that's a great thing for middle athletes to get some touch, to get some feel, to be on there up quick, get your reflexes, and like you say, get comfortable with the tight net play. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Let's face it too, right? Chucking the volleyball now is the newest thing.
Right.
And where do you learn to do that the best? I mean, when I was playing with the Hurricanes this year, I stepped in and coached them for the 16U team. We did a short court, and there at the end of it, there was a middle there that could blow the ball by me when she threw it. And I was like max jumping, trying to do it, and she was wiping it off my hands, and the whole gym's erupting, of course, every time she wipes me. Didn't win, but you watched her develop that through that drill.
No, it's brilliant.
Yeah, we've gotten several gems on this episode, Josh. I don't know if we've been taking notes. I have not. We got the performance currency. We got the short court gem. I mean, we learned about some of the COVID.
Competing is a skill.
Competing is a skill. I mean, that one,
takeaway.
you have to just accept that one. That one's a maximum. And that my dad thinks he could beat some of our national team athletes in short court. And I mean, I think that's the full takeaway. So, I mean, I'm sorry to have to do this because we're having a blast and we're getting into it with you guys, but we're reaching the end of the program. Nobody's listening anyway because they shut it off about 30 minutes ago. So if you're still with us, thank you so much for watching and or listening wherever you're watching. New episodes every Monday. Josh gets them out there nice and early for you on the podcast. What do you release? 5 a.m., Josh?
Well, I upload it on Sunday afternoon, and then the server just releases it when it's time, Garrett. I don't know what time it actually comes out on. When you wake up, just turn on your phone. It'll be there.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks you guys both so much for joining us. Steve and Dad, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for listening. That'll do it for this one. We'll see you next time.